Okay, I got cut off in that last video because I went to flip the camera and I hit the wrong button. I hit the stop button because I'm a dumb dumb. So we talked about the idea that it's at the bottom of page one, top of page two. Michael Pollan's talking about the way food creates communities. People come together in groups to eat food, and sometimes it's your friend community. I want to get all my friends together because I want to go to this fancy restaurant, and I want everybody to come with me because we're going to order something together, and I need 12 people to eat the kind of crazy food that I'm looking for. Um, well, there's other kinds of groups that we build culture and community around food. Um, so there's religious dinners. I mean, a lot of food involves religious dinner, right? So Easter dinner, people will come together. Seder for the Jews, but also fasting, right? The whole idea of fasting for Ramadan is like an idea that as a culture, we're not going to eat food altogether at the same time people are not going to eat. So food, it's a way of binding your community because when you're doing the same thing as people in the community are doing, and at the same time, you're like bound together in a group, you're connected. There's traditions. I'm sure you and your family probably have traditions with food. Um, for example, like, certain families will want to have like a Christmas dinner together. Or there's a kind of joke in New York, but Jewish people on Christmas often go to Chinese restaurants because a lot of the Chinese people and Jews, large numbers are not Christian. Well, obviously Jews are not Christians, but a lot of Chinese people are also not Christians, and so they're open on Christmas, whereas a lot of places are closed. And so there's it's like sort of joke in New York, but it's fun. It's a tradition. You go have food. Chinese food on Christmas Day if you're Jewish. It's a fun thing to do. And when you go to the restaurant, by the way, you'll see other Jews there, and you'll be like, "Oh, hey, how are you guys doing?" And you kind of know because everybody else, other Christians on Christmas, are celebrating Christmas. Um, but you're not, right? So when you go to a Chinese restaurant on Christmas Day, the other people you're seeing are probably not Christians because otherwise they'd be with their family opening presents. And so it's like a bonding experience because you're all doing the same thing together, even strangers, even people you don't know. Um, so food really binds and links groups together, creates groups. There's Jews that don't eat shellfish or pork. That creates a group unity because your group, Jewish people, don't eat these animals. And you're linked. So you're not going to go to a restaurant and have pig. You're going to order similar things. You're going to go to restaurants, for example, that don't serve pig at all. Um, and if a restaurant does serve pig, you might not go at all. That may be like a restaurant your people do not go to. Um, my friend group, because we're such food crazies, my best friend in the whole world has an annual holiday which he calls the Fucktacular, and it's really simple. We go to the same restaurant, Big Wong's on Mott Street, and we go the first Saturday after Halloween, and we all just get we just eat so much Chinese food, and then we all go see a movie. And it's an annual tradition that my friends do, but it's built around food. It's built around going to the same restaurant at the same time of year every year. We've been doing it for a decade, more than a decade. It's been 11 years. And it's a holiday that my friend made up because he invented his own holiday because he's a crazy person. So food, it links groups, it links communities. Um, okay, cool. Let's go take a look at it. There's bigger communities too, by the way. So, for example, in America, people don't eat dogs. They're not food over here. In South America, people eat guinea pigs, which is not food you get in America. So there's bigger communities that are created by these kinds of little communities like my friend group, and then there's religious communities and there's social communities. But the point is that food. He's at the top of page two. Pollan says that the food traditions represent one of the strongest social glues we have. Okay, cool. My wife and I also have a pancake anniversary and a barbecue anniversary. It's once a year. It celebrates the first time we had pancakes together, and then on a different day, the first time we had barbecue together. And so once a year, we go to celebrate that pancake anniversary by going to a special new pancake place every year. And on the barbecue anniversary, we go celebrate a special new barbecue place every year. All right, so traditions, right? Traditions based around food. It's a big part of how we come together as a community. This may seem silly that I'm bringing this up, but a lot of people are just like, yeah, food, whatever, it's for nutrition, you need food to live. It's more complicated than that. Because if you needed food to live, you could just eat the same thing every day alone, but you don't do that. So you're eating for enjoyment, but it's also you're eating for community. eating dinner with friends, having traditions, family and friends and religious communities and ethnic communities, and right, this is like the glue that sort of holds your groups together. So food is a more complicated thing. We use it for a lot of complicated things. Okay, cool. All right, he says historically, national cuisines have been remarkably stable, right? Meaning they tend to stay the same year after year. Like, turkey on Thanksgiving. People will eat that every Thanksgiving for centuries. They're resistant to change, which is why the immigrant's refrigerator is the last place to look for signs of assimilation. He says that assimilation, this is so complicated. The immigrant's refrigerator is the very last place to look for signs of assimilation. Assimilation, when an immigrant assimilates, it means that the person has come from another country. And if they've been assimilated, then they are like totally on board with American culture and American traditions. He says the refrigerator is the last place to check. Because what a lot of immigrants, even though they'll sort of want to participate fully in American culture and do things. Some immigrants, some people move here and they want to keep the old ways, and some people move here and they want to do the way people around them are doing. But he says the refrigerator is one of the last places to see if they're really serious about that, because people may claim, they may be like, oh yeah, I'm doing it the American way, but food traditions, if it's part of your culture, goes back hundreds and hundreds of years, and there are certain foods that people will just have in their refrigerators that are based off of because it connects them to the old world. They're like, no, I'm an American now. I have no traditions connected to the old world. But food is one of those traditions from the old world that sticks around, right? Your grandmother's favorite food. My friend Alex Sue and I used to go to restaurants where we get fish with the head on, like the head still on. We go to Thai restaurants and eat these kind of big cooked fish meals. And he told me that in his family, he said the family used to fight about who would get to eat the eyeballs. He says in Chinese culture, eyeballs on fish are considered to be a delicacy. And I asked him, I said, are they any good? Like, should you eat the eyeballs? And he said, no, they're terrible. It's just that there's only two of them. And if you're in a big family, only two people can have them. And so they're considered a delicacy. It's actually not very good. So it's the traditions that you were, but he eats the eyeballs because it's like, tradition. So he says people may change, but the food that links us often stays remarkably similar to how it was in the past and your cultures. It's cultural continuity. It's a way of thinking about your mother and your grandmother, your father, your grandfather, great-grandfather, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, like the culture they came from. And they often have these sort of foods that are part of that culture. Okay, cool. Doing pretty good. Okay, so these two paragraphs, he's been talking about what's good. Oh, sorry, I don't want to turn the around. In these paragraphs, he's been talking about what's good about eating everything. Next up, you can see at the first full paragraph on page 2 begins, yet. So you can see he says he started in the middle of page 1 being like, eating everything has a lot of advantages and disadvantages. He says there are boons, meaning good things, and challenges, difficulties. And he starts listing off stuff. One of the first things he lists off is the boons, the good things. And he is now finished with that. So now he's going to talk about the bad things and the difficulties. And I'll pick that up in the next video.